There is a kind of mess that doesn't announce itself. It isn't the sort of mess that makes you stop at the doorway and think, right, this has got out of hand. It's quieter than that. A cup beside the sofa, a jumper over the back of a chair, 2 envelopes on the kitchen table that you are going to open properly, a few dishes in the sink, a phone charger that has somehow become part of the floor. None of it is terrible. None of it is even especially unusual. But when you walk into the room, you feel it. The space isn't dirty, exactly. It just doesn't feel settled. It doesn't feel ready for you. There's a slight heaviness to it, as if the day hasn't quite been put away. And that feeling matters more than we often admit. Because most homes don't become cluttered in one dramatic moment. They become cluttered through small pauses, small delays, small decisions that seem too minor to deal with at the time. I'll put that there for now. I'll open that later. I might wear that again. I'll take it upstairs in a minute. And because each thing is small, it doesn't feel worth stopping for. So we leave it. Then we leave the next thing. And by the end of the day, the room is full of these tiny, unfinished moments. Most people then do one of 2 things. They either ignore it until the weekend, when it has become irritating enough to deal with, or they try to sort it all out in one tired burst, usually at the exact point in the day when they have the least patience for it. And then keeping the home tidy starts to feel like a much bigger job than it really needs to be. But often the problem is not laziness. It's not that you don't care. It's not that you need to become a more disciplined person. It's usually something far more practical. Your home has places where things belong, but it may not have a daily reset. It has cupboards, drawers, baskets, hooks, shelves. But it doesn't have a small, reliable moment where the day is gently closed down before it spreads into the next one. That is the point of the 5-minute home reset. It is a simple idea, inspired by the Kaizen approach of small, steady improvement. Not a full clean, not a dramatic new routine. Not an evening ritual that requires a notebook, candles, and a version of yourself with far more energy than you actually have at 9 o'clock. Just 5 minutes. One small area. A few things returned to where they belong. The aim is not to make your home look perfect. Perfect is usually too fragile to be useful in a real home. The aim is much more modest and much more repeatable. It is to stop today's clutter from becoming tomorrow's background noise. Because clutter rarely feels heavy at the beginning. A letter on the table is just a letter. A plate in the sink is just a plate. A jumper on the chair is just a jumper. A bag by the door is just a bag. But together they create a sort of low-level friction. You wake up, or you come home, and the space is already asking things of you. Move this, sort that, decide what to do with that envelope, find a place for that bag, take that mug back to the kitchen. Before you have properly started, your attention has already been spent in small amounts. That is why clutter can feel more tiring than it looks. It isn't only visual, it is mental. Every misplaced item carries a tiny question. Should I deal with that now? Where should that go? Is that important? Have I forgotten something? You may not think those questions in full sentences, but you feel them. They sit in the room. They make the space feel a little less calm than it could be. So a room can be clean and still feel stressful. The issue is not always dirt. Sometimes it is unresolved attention. A 5-minute reset works because it doesn't wait for the clutter to become a proper job. It catches the buildup while it is still light, while it can still be handled without resentment. There is a very practical Japanese sensibility in that. Not the fantasy that every Japanese home is perfectly calm and beautifully ordered, because homes are lived in by people, and people are people everywhere. But there is something useful in the idea that care for a space can be part of the daily rhythm, rather than something saved for a big correction later. A small action, done often, is usually less demanding than a large action done in frustration. And the first part of making this work is important. Do not try to reset the whole house. That is where many good intentions fall apart. They begin too large. They expect too much from the version of you who exists at the end of a normal day. And that version of you is not looking for a new life system. It is probably looking for the kettle, the sofa, and a bit of quiet. So choose one reset zone. Not a room, a zone. This might be the kitchen counter, the coffee table, the entrance area, the dining table, the chair where clothes always seem to gather, the bedside table. One surface, one corner, one small place that changes the feeling of the home when it is clear. A useful reset zone usually has 3 qualities. First, you see it often. There is not much point beginning with a cupboard you only open now and then. Choose somewhere that affects the atmosphere of the room, somewhere your eyes land naturally. Second, it collects daily clutter. Not deep storage, not sentimental things, not a drawer full of old cables that has been quietly waiting since 2018. Something active, somewhere ordinary life leaves its trace. And third, it can genuinely be reset in 5 minutes. If it takes half an hour, it is not a reset zone. It is a project. And projects are fine, but they are not the same as a daily habit. For many people, the best place to start is the kitchen counter or the surface near the front door. These places are like small landing strips for daily life. Things arrive there when we come in, when we are carrying too much, when we are hungry, when we are switching from work to home, from outside to inside, from one part of the day to another. Keys, receipts, letters, cups, bags, headphones, parcels. They are put down for a moment, and then the moment passes. This is how temporary places become permanent places. And a surprising amount of clutter is really just temporary storage that never got closed. The 5-minute reset is the practice of closing those temporary places before they become part of the furniture. Once you have chosen your zone, make the rules very simple. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Not 20. Not until everything is finished. 5. The timer matters more than it sounds. Without a timer, a quick tidy can easily turn into wiping shelves, reorganizing a drawer, reading a letter you found under something else, moving a pile from one room to another, and suddenly the whole thing has become larger than you meant it to be. Then your brain remembers that. It starts to think, tidying always expands. Tidying always takes longer than expected. Tidying is not safe to begin when I'm tired. A timer gives the task a boundary. It says, this will not take over the evening. And when something has a clear edge, it becomes easier to start. During those 5 minutes, there are only 3 kinds of action. Return. Remove. Prepare. Return means putting things back where they already belong. The mug goes to the kitchen. The jumper goes to the wardrobe or the laundry basket. The pen goes back in the drawer. The shoes go to their place. The book goes back on the shelf. Nothing clever, nothing elaborate. Just returning things to their proper homes. Remove means taking away what should not stay in that zone. Rubbish, packaging, empty envelopes, old notes, things that are obviously finished. You are not solving your entire paper system in 5 minutes. You are not reorganizing the whole entrance area. You are simply removing the things that have no reason to remain there. Prepare means leaving the space ready for its next use. Wipe the counter if it needs it. Straighten the cushion. Clear enough of the table that breakfast won't begin with moving yesterday out of the way. Put your keys where tomorrow morning will not have to search for them. That is all. Return. Remove. Prepare. This small sequence matters because vague tidying is surprisingly tiring. If the task is just tidy up, you have to keep deciding what that means, where to start, what counts, whether to keep going, whether this thing belongs here or not. A clear sequence takes away some of that thinking. You are not making 100 decisions. You are following 3 simple movements. And if the timer ends before the area is perfect, stop. That part is not a detail. It is part of the system. The habit is not built by finishing everything. It is built by making the promise small enough that you are willing to keep it again tomorrow. Some evenings, 5 minutes will clear the whole zone. Some evenings, it will only make it slightly better. Both count. The point is not perfection. The point is interruption. You are interrupting the slow build-up before it hardens into something you avoid. And over time, the reset starts to teach you things. You begin to notice where clutter gets stuck. Maybe letters always pile up because there is no simple place for incoming post. Maybe bags end up on the floor because there is no hook near the door. Maybe clothes land on the chair because the laundry basket is just far enough away to be ignored at night. This is where Kaizen becomes more than tidying. You are not just cleaning up after yourself. You are observing the system you live inside. If the same item lands in the same wrong place every day, it is not necessarily a character flaw. It is useful information. It may be telling you that the proper place is too inconvenient, or that the item does not have a proper place at all, or that the system only works when you have energy, which means it does not really work. A hook may be better than a cupboard. A tray may be better than a drawer. A basket near the stairs may be better than expecting yourself to carry things up immediately every single time. The best home system is not the one that looks most impressive. It is the one you still use when you are tired, distracted, or carrying 3 things at once. That is also how this habit begins to need less motivation. Motivation is useful when it appears, but it is not something to build a home around. Some evenings you will feel capable. Some evenings you will feel flat. Some evenings you will simply want to be done with the day. So the reset needs to work for the low-energy version of you. The easiest way to do that is to attach it to something that already happens. After dinner, reset the counter. After locking the front door, reset the entryway. After making tea, clear the coffee table while the kettle boils. After brushing your teeth, reset the bedside table. The exact timing is less important than the cue. A habit becomes easier when it does not have to be remembered from nowhere. It is much easier to follow something already built into the evening than to rely on a fresh decision every night. The cue becomes the reminder. You can also make the reset visible. Keep a small cloth near the kitchen counter. Put a basket where stray items tend to gather. Keep recycling where paper enters the house. Put a hook where the bag actually lands, not where you think it ought to land. These small adjustments are not about buying more storage. They are about reducing friction. The right action should be slightly easier than the wrong one. If you live with other people, the way you speak about the reset matters as well. Everyone needs to be tidier may be true, but it usually doesn't help very much. It sounds like a criticism, and criticism tends to make people defensive, not organized. A clearer version is, before we finish the evening, let's reset this one area for 5 minutes. That gives everyone a specific target. It is not a judgment on the whole house or on anyone's personality. It is just one small act of maintenance. A shared reset zone is often easier to accept than a general complaint about mess. It also changes the feeling of responsibility. The home becomes less like one person's invisible workload and more like a place everyone helps return to order in small ways. The reset is especially useful if your home often feels messy even after cleaning, because cleaning and resetting are different. Cleaning removes dirt. Resetting restores order. You can vacuum a room and still feel unsettled if every surface is covered in things waiting to be dealt with. You can wash all the dishes and still feel behind if the table is full of old post, school forms, receipts, or half-finished tasks. A calm home usually needs both. But resetting is often the layer people miss because it seems too small to matter. In real life, the smallness is exactly why it works. 5 minutes does not require a free afternoon. It does not require a fresh burst of discipline. It does not require you to suddenly become someone who loves housework. It only asks you to close the day in one small place. And that small place can change how the next day begins. Think of walking into the kitchen in the morning and finding the counter clear enough to make tea without moving 3 things first. Or coming home and seeing that the entrance is not already full of shoes, bags, post, and yesterday's errands. Or sitting down in the evening and finding the table ready for you, rather than covered in the leftovers of earlier decisions. These are not huge changes. They are small reductions in friction. But a home with less friction often feels calmer in a way that is difficult to explain until you have experienced it. You spend less time searching, less time sighing at things you meant to deal with, less time being reminded by your own rooms of what you have not finished yet. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to trust the system. You stop seeing tidiness as something that only happens after a big clean. You start to see it as something that can be gently maintained in small, ordinary passes. A little each day, not as punishment, not as performance, just as care. So tonight, choose one zone. Not the whole house, not the worst cupboard, not the task you have been avoiding for months. Choose the place that would make tomorrow feel slightly easier if it were clear. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Return what belongs elsewhere. Remove what is finished. Prepare the space for its next use. Then stop. Let it be enough. A tidy home is not usually built by one heroic day of cleaning. It is built by the quiet habit of returning things to order before disorder becomes the atmosphere. And sometimes 5 minutes is enough to make a room feel like it is on your side again.